You and I have some shared interests, clearly, in the world of UFOs, but I want to talk. Most people know of you because of Bigelow Aerospace. They know that you're this billionaire investor and you're a very successful businessman, but you have a deep fascination with UFOs.
Yeah, sure do.
How did it get started?
Back when when I was about 3 years old, which would be about 1947, and actually of May of that year, my grandparents had a very close encounter that was dramatic. And they were taking an evening drive in the late afternoon up into the mountains and coming on back down to Las Vegas. And they saw what appeared to be at first an airplane on fire. And the object became closer and closer to them, and they pulled off to the side of the road. And at one point, then it filled up the windshield, and they thought they were going to die. And at the last second, it shot off and disappeared. And I learned of this story when I was probably 10 years old, and because I was 3 at the time, and my mother had told me this story. So I approached my grandfather, and he wouldn't talk about it. Now, after all these years, like 7 years have gone by, because I was intrigued with it. And so I went to my grandmother, and she only would say a few words, but she wouldn't talk. So I got the story from my mom, and my grandfather had to sit on the side of the road there in the car for a while to recompose himself, and because they thought they were going to die, and then he finally was able to drive on back to Las Vegas. So that was the beginning for me.
Did he describe what you said? It looked like a plane on fire, but like, what was the shape of it as it got closer?
I recall any kind of shape that my mother described. I don't recall that.
But it wasn't a plane. They knew it was something.
That's right. That's right.
Crazy.
So in the family, the family had an event, and I lived right next door to my grandparents, and the family had an event that kind of started things at that date. For me, other personal things came later, but for the family, that was a big deal.
So you said 47?
47.
And 47 was the time of the Roswell crash. 47 was a time there was a lot of UFO activity being observed worldwide, and the speculation is that this had to do with the nuclear bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all the tests that the United States had done and Russia had done, and that there was a lot of interest in that. Well, actually, Russia hadn't dropped any bombs by that time, right?
Right.
It was after that. But
Right.
that there was interest in our species by extraterrestrials because these crazy assholes are detonating nukes. Like, let's go take a look at them.
Right. Well, you had so-called Foo Fighters during the war, these lights that were following bombers, and the tail gunners were the ones that saw them most often, of course, and that happened through the war, and then of course Roswell. But before that was Ken Arnold, right? In about June-ish, and then in July 8th was Roswell.
And there's an uptick though from the Trinity experiments, right?
I think I gather my feeling simply is that without any kind of other evidence or proof that was a huge stimulus. Yeah.
So this was around that time, and you had heard about this as a part of, family discussions.
Right.
And so that sort of ignited the fire initially.
Yeah. And I started asking my friends, as I say, when I was about 10, have you any reports in your family of anything? And by golly, a couple of my close friends told me things that they had never told me before. So that wasn't necessarily an exclusive event, is what I'm saying. Other people in Las Vegas had seen things at close proximity as well.
Your relationship to this is obviously something that you've carried for so long. It's been an obsession of yours for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
It started with this, but what personal experiences, if any, have you had?
Well, when I was probably 7 or 8, I used to have what I chalked up all my life to just being silly dreams. And I had maybe 5 or 6 of these dreams, and I could never make sense of them. And I would be laying in bed on my side, and typical dream, always the same. There would be 3 short somethings in a kind of monk robe, and so I couldn't see any face, couldn't see any appendages, and these 3 whatevers were standing there, and they were not too far from my eye level as far as the heights and so forth.
So these,
Yeah, and so there was nothing I was an avid comic book reader, but there was nothing in the whole genre of comic books that related to that, or movies. And we didn't have television in Las Vegas till 53 or 54. And even after that, it was terrible broadcasting, at first. But so it made no sense to me. And so over my lifetime, I never mentioned it to anybody, including my wife. It's funny how you keep things secret, and just kind of for no good reason. Maybe I would be embarrassed to talk about it. But I finally thought, well, maybe it was just dreams. Maybe it was something else. And so that was a first event personally that I had at that time in the subject.
when did you start to connect the idea of these tiny people or human-like things with extraterrestrials?
Was later when I began to start my process as a researcher and as a student in the subject, and began to talk with people who made it their business to be experts in abductions. And the more I got into the field and sat writing out questions for the researcher, for the therapist who would be asking the questions, and I'd be sitting there watching the process. And just over time, I thought, well, maybe there was something more to it, but I'm better off not knowing anything, so I'll just block it off and forget about it.
Yeah, I talked last night about John Mack a little bit, the Harvard.
A great guy.
He did a lot of these sort of hypnotic regression sessions with people where they describe very similar scenarios.
Multiple different situations. The abduction phenomena was very proliferate in the population, it seemed like. Even we did a survey called the Roper Poll, and we repeated it 3 times so that the margin of error was really reduced to like 1.5%. And abduction researchers came up with the 10 questions, and so we distributed that, and the conclusion was a relatively sizable percentage of the population had some kind of experiences, according to them, according to the researchers, and according to the poll. I am not qualified to speak to the accuracy of whether the questions were that relevant to the conclusions or not, but that's what they said. And and I had in my own research found people that I put them through a regression, not personally, but I found a hypnotherapist that could do that, and I found a number of people just here, there, scattered around, maybe somebody in my own staff, and they would come up with these stories and these events.
One of the criticisms of John Mack and hypnotic regression in general is that the idea that you can put a memory into someone's head, that you could suggest things and you could create false memories. And this was something that I've read in the criticism of his work, that this style of hypnotic regression and bringing up these very specific scenarios to a bunch of different people, you can sort of help create, especially in people that are easily influenced or people that are open to suggestion, you could put these false memories in their head. And so, especially when you're dealing with something as fantastic as a
Right.
UFO or
Right.
alien abduction or visitation or something like
Right.
that.
Oh, that's definitely possible. There's also something called screen memory, but dealing with the power suggestion. That's absolutely true. But my experience was with different hypnotherapists, they went out of their way. In fact, maybe if they did make a suggestion, it was just the opposite. They might say, "Okay, you're on board this craft. Where's the lighting coming from? Is it coming from the corner or of the room that you're in?" Well, there were no corners, and they'd be corrected right away by the person being hypnotized. And so they went just the opposite direction on purpose to make suggestions to maybe coax the person to come that direction, and they wouldn't do it. The person wouldn't do it. Now, screen memory is different. Supposedly, if somebody has a very close encounter with supposedly somebody that's ET, you leave the memory turns out to be entirely different, and that's put into you consciously, and you recall something entirely different than what actually happened. Maybe you saw two deer on the road, or
Right.
something of that sort, or maybe there were owls or whatever. So, that's
A big step forward, a big improvement was the hypnosis. The whole process of hypnosis is a sort of a deep relaxation at the same time you're confronting these memories. That helped a lot.
The problem that people with some hypnosis sessions is that you can be led into false memories.
True. And I think this happened. I think, having been at many, many UFO gatherings, I think some people are mistaken about their experience. I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, understand, I try to stick strictly to what I experienced, and then my own musings, my own philosophy that I've had 45 years to develop. I think that probably some people do have extremely unique dreams that seem so real that the actual physical event didn't happen. And I've tried to argue with people about how evil their intentions would be, and I'm saying, the decades that we've been having these sightings, with that sort of technology, if they wanted to replace us on this planet, we'd never know what hit us.
No.
I don't think that, and actually I think they're so advanced that if there's sightings, it's not an accident. It's not like they slap their forehead, humans spotted me again, I have to be more careful next time, No, I think they'd be perfectly capable of being undetected. We never have any. I think these little glimpses are probably a generalized customization that we might need as a species, but maybe on the other hand, there's some more individual interest. And I used to be really skeptical. I'd hear stories where people were describing them as having some particular interest in them, and I'd tell them, that'd be like them walking by an anthill and saying, "Oh, I think I'll have a conversation with that little ant right there."
Right.
Humans are a bunch of savages, but at the same time, I believe they probably do have. If you saw one when you were 8 years old and you see one as an adult, they know it's you. Their ability to process data and retain it and store it is beyond anything we can imagine. I think we're on the verge of that kind of paradigm shift with something I would call the computer brain interface. The minute we can do that kind of thing, it's kind of scary about the possibilities. But I've been at conferences where people talk about these beings as being predatory or evil. One guy was trying to tell me that they capture people, dissect them, and dump their body. And I said, "Oh, okay, name one." And he goes, "Well, so-and-so." And I go, no, not the guy who puts this theory out there. Who's the victim who was found cut to pieces? And then I said, "So name one." And he gives me another name. It was still somebody who's promoting this theory. he just didn't get. I said, what's the name of the victim? And he couldn't come up with one. So I'm skeptical about that.
Well, anytime a fantastic subject, whether it's UFOs or psychics or Bigfoot, or you find these people that just want to believe, and it's very disheartening. There's something about that. Like, it's hard to separate truth from fantasy with a lot of these folks. And
I think there's a lot of fantasy and delusion going on.
Yeah.
And I have encountered other people that I do believe had legitimate experiences, but I wouldn't consider them in the majority, and that's an unpopular view. But
no, I have that view. I'm not completely skeptical, but I'm skeptical enough. I also know that it's an aspect of human nature where people want to tell stories that make them unique without actually having to have done anything special in their life. They want to be special, and some people tell stories that make them out to be very special because they've been chosen to have this unique experience with an extraterrestrial. You haven't, they have, and it makes them, it satisfies these delusions of grandeur that some
and I
have.
certainly try to downplay that aspect of it. I say I really favor the idea that this was an accident. It was precipitated by my foolish move of getting too close. I believe they probably just took me aboard in order to correct damage that they were a part of that was even unexpected for them.
So did you have physical damage that you could see?
No, but one thing that leads me to think that all of the repairs they might have done weren't complete was my initial EEG brainwave scan. And this was done at the same hospital where Muhammad Ali did his. And it was very, what do you call it?
Irregular?
What's the term? Double blind. Dr. Kandel did not tell the technician what I was in there for. Mm-hmm. And so he wasn't looking for some particular thing that would support or deny my experience. So he just described an unusual pattern in the brain that in another brainwave scan years later wasn't there anymore. So
what was this?
Trying to think of the exact wording. It was a bisynchronous wave alternating from front to back. I remember those words, but I have the report from both EEGs. So I've been interested in finding someone who might have been hit by lightning, or some electrician that raised up against a wire and had a huge amount of energy come through the brain, and see if an EEG compares to this weird pattern that they're describing there. But there's a lot of speculation open, and I, of course, have done trying to figure out what happened there. And there's some amazing things that sometimes, I try to stick to the stuff I can document, stuff that where I have other witnesses, and that documentable. That's what I go for. It. I have this information concerning the EEG, documents of it.
Let's take it back to the day that this happened. You're 22. You're logging. You're in the woods. Tell me what happened.
It's just, when you're done working hard physical labor, everybody's kind of jacked up, and there was a whole lot of chatter in the car. We're just talking away. It's starting to get dark. We just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out, and I looked up ahead, and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First, I thought, no big deal. It was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. Maybe light shining through a tent. It was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye. And one by one, the other guys in the crew started looking, but nobody said, "Oh my God, what's that?" or anything like that. It was just kind of an idle curiosity at first. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just whoa, you know, I mean, it was just mind blowing instantly. I inexplicably got out of the truck and ran toward this thing, but I thought it was just going to take off, be gone in a flash. And
So when you say in the clearing, are you driving on a dirt road?
yeah, it's a dirt road. Trees are real thick. This was a part of the contract we hadn't cut in yet, so trees were a lot thicker there, except for this clearing, and we weren't the only ones that saw it. We found out later. Sheriff had on file people who were in the area that saw it, you know, hunters and fishermen over there at Black Canyon Lake. And the movement that they described was what the crew described when it left. And of course, I didn't see that, but
What did they describe?
they described this glow rising up and streaking off, I believe they said, toward the northeast. There were some people that probably don't want to be public about it, but there was one guy who was just deer hunting, and he worked in military intelligence, and he stuck by what he and his wife saw. They were both together. And another guy that was at Black Canyon Lake, I won't mention any of those guys' names unless they chose to, but found out later that there was more official investigation that nobody talked about at the time. Immediately, though, this was all nonsense, and these guys murdered him, and even my oldest brother, he didn't believe me. He thought they had killed me. What we were doing with the brush that we cut was piling it up. There were piles that were in the clearing so that the Forest Service could burn these piles, you know, when the conditions were right, where it wouldn't spread, you know. Wet conditions otherwise, but burning up this excess material to reduce the fire danger in the woods. And my oldest brother was tearing those piles apart. He was certain that my body was under there. And there were some pretty testy confrontations between him and my brother. And I think even my other brother, Dwayne, he initially took that approach, but he quickly became sure that they were telling the truth.
Now, what do you remember when you were going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day.
Well, I don't. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's
What you were seeing when you ran into the clearing?
well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard to for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, you know. And
Did it have color to it?
it was kind of a golden color, but with a kind of a softness to it that was, it wasn't like beams of light shooting out. It was just this haze of light.
And did it seem to come from a specific part of the craft, or?
Most surface seemed to be glowing. There were darker areas that didn't give off light, but it was the parts that weren't glowing. It wasn't so hard, bright that you couldn't look at it, but it had a metallic look to it.
So what did the craft itself look like?
It was classic disc-shaped craft. The years later, there was a report. I can never remember names, but this guy was saying that he worked at Area 51, and they had something in there. He worked with the Tester Model Corporation to create a model of what he was describing, and that's actually the closest of any of the other descriptions I've seen. But I don't think these things have just one type of craft. I think there's many, many different shapes.
What makes you think that?
Well, personal experience. I try not to emphasize these other incidents, but I've seen the glowing sphere. I've seen the giant black triangle. Other craft that were a ball of light that you couldn't penetrate the light with your eyes, but
Now, this after this experience.
I think the reason my brother Dwayne was persuaded more quickly than my brother Don was that he saw a craft in those woods. That's probably 10 miles from there while deer hunting. And it was kind of tic-tac shaped, and that's something that's been observed by, in military reports recently.
Yeah. So you see this thing, this disc-shaped craft,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
It started to move and started to get louder.
Louder.
Yeah. It was, the guys in the truck heard it too. There was a low thunder, is kind of a rumble that you actually sort of felt more than heard. And then there were other high-pitched frequencies. I was talking to a group of students from technical college, and they were really interested in what the sound was like to try to, compare that with theories that they had concerning what might be their propulsion. But the increase in volume, it suddenly got louder as it started to move. And, at the same time, the guys in the truck were screaming, "Get away from there, let's go, get back in the truck, let's go." And which would have been the smart thing to do. But as soon as it moved, it startled me, and I just ducked for cover. There was a log there. I got down behind this log, and they were screaming, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was just going to, stand up and run away. But see, when I jumped for cover, I went down and forward to reach where the log would hide me. And that brought me closer to it. So when I stood up, at that point, that was the closest I was to the object.
How close?
It was still like 8 or 10 feet away, from the surface of it. But that was when the energy discharge happened. I've worked on a number of theories about what might have happened. At the time, some of the other guys on the truck were thinking, immediately Steve said, "It got him." Like, if you shot a deer, you got it,
Right.
And so it might not have been, as we assumed at first, that it was some kind of stun gun or something, but maybe just closing that gap allowed this energy to leap to ground through me. And
Like staticity or something.
yeah, the thing that really weighs heavy in that direction is that when I found years later that they have satellites or something that record the number of lightning strikes, and that area has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any place in the continental United States, except for the Everglades. The Everglades has a bit more, but that's over water. So that adds to another theory. What were they doing there? You know?
So that area that has a high level of lightning strikes, do you think it makes sense that they're observing that, or is that why they were there? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Up until a few years ago, you know, you walk down the rim road, and if you see a tree that's been hit by lightning, you can always see it. It's a strip of bark that's just blasted out of there, and it's all bare, and it can actually still survive the lightning strike, but it turns the sap to steam instantly, and it just explodes out the side of the tree, blows the bark off. But I was at a conference where this lady was. I said, "What's this?" And she says, "That's fulgurite." I said, "What's that?" And she says, "That's when lightning strikes the earth. You've got millions of volts, millions of degrees that form these crystals that aren't formed geologically." So I kind of leaned towards this theory that perhaps they were looking for fulgurite, for a very unique kind of crystal that would be formed by that kind of blast of energy. I'd never heard of fulgurite before.
Can you pull up that, Jamie? I'd like to see what that looks like. I know tritonite is something that happens when they call it nuclear glass. It happens when there is either a nuclear explosion or when asteroid impacts hit the Earth. Right there.
Well, these crystals are supposed to have very special properties for people who are into crystal. But
what does that say there, Jamie? This is what happens. That's what can. Wow, that's wild.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. That's pretty wild. So it might be that they were looking for that. Well, who knows? It may be something that they use for energy. What is that? That's really when lightning struck Santa created that thing? That's wild. That is wild. Look at that. It looks like a tree coming out of the sand.
I'm guessing that was wet sand.
Yeah.
But
yeah, well, it's right next to the beach. It must be wet. That is crazy. That's really wild. What do you remember from that moment on?
When I regained consciousness, it wasn't real quick. It wasn't real walking right up. It was real slow. It was dim. My consciousness was kind of like in and out for a while. I didn't know where I was. The pain and the feeling that I was mortally wounded, something was so wrong inside. I felt like I was dying. And this is what really fueled the panic when I finally laid eyes on these creatures. Of course, you know, all of the mental programming that we get from Hollywood that aliens are invading monsters, you know, didn't help. But I instantly associated this feeling of dying with pain with them. So I was combative immediately.
Where were you?
I was lying on my back on a raised table. There was a light above me. It was not real bright. It was not so bright that I couldn't, see the outline of the fixture. But
what did the fixture look like?
Kind of like that, only much larger. Just a soft glow. And in the movie, there's a little bit of striking on the part of the aliens against me. That didn't happen. I lashed out at them. The one closest to me, I felt really weak. I didn't have enough strength to do much. So when my arm contacted him, he just fell back very unexpectedly easy into the other one. And I rolled off the table in the other direction. And they came around the table, and the three of them were coming towards me. And I just grabbed something from behind me, an object off of the shelf there, and started swinging it at them.
What was the object?
It was just some large, long cylinder or rod, glass, some clear material. I wasn't studying it. I was looking at them and swinging wildly, screaming threats. They stopped. And I was planning on attacking more fully, just making way past them. The only doorway I could see was on the other side of them.
And it looked like a doorway?
Yeah, it looked like a door. Just, I guess it's a pretty typical description nowadays. Very large eyes, hairless, two eyes, nose, mouth. I didn't see them speak or no change in the expressions. And to me, that in the face of all this screaming and the fear that I was projecting, their lack of reaction probably just added to my panic. But
Did they think they were a living creature, or did they feel like they were a robot?
well, without expression, I'll say that. But, I've had 45 years to think about that. In more recent years, I think, well, maybe if they're telepathic and it's developed enough to where they don't need to talk, they also don't need facial expression.
Right.
And so their ability to communicate with each other would be much richer and more complete than we have. And speech and frowns or smiles or whatever would become obsolete pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, there's a theory about where human beings are headed. If we continue to evolve, that we will one day reach this point where the biological limitations of our monkey bodies will slowly start to fade away, and we'll have different abilities to
Well,
communicate.
why would we frown or
Yeah.
smile if you can say much more?
And so their musculature, did they look like smooth, like they had no clear muscles?
They were pretty smooth, very light. When I hit the one, it fell back into the other one pretty easily, like he weighed hardly anything.
Like a little.
Yeah. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. But when I tell this story and try to relate to people, I'm trying to communicate what I experienced and how utterly, utterly traumatic that was, and how it was so devastating. I was, on the verge of catatonic for weeks after it happened. But I don't want to relate this story in order to inspire fear, because I've had enough time to think about it that I think that it was unwarranted, that my reaction was just due to my ignorance of the situation. The fact that I was returned at all is pretty significant,
Yeah.
The idea that these beings are just kidnapping people willy-nilly and doing terrible things to them, I don't subscribe to that theory. Now, I try to separate what I actually experienced from things that I've concluded just from thinking about it. But it seems to me that, they've been seen, observed, there have been sightings for all, before I was born.
Had you heard the Betty and Barney Hill story before you were abducted?
I probably had. But if I thought if they had some sort of sinister intentions, it'd be a done deal. They wouldn't be sneaking around, hiding, and
Right.
I believe with that level of technology. Look at it this way. Human beings, just virtually everything technological that we have is just a few hundred years old. Before that, the most technological thing we had was fire. And in just the last 50 years, the progress of our science has grown to far overshadow everything we had accomplished in thousands of years before that. So I'm thinking what astronomers tell us about these other star systems is that they could be hundreds of thousands, millions, or maybe billions of years older than us. So if we accomplished the kind of technology that we have in a few decades, what is possible with millions of years of development? I mean, we couldn't begin to recognize what they're capable of.
Right.
So I think it's presumptuous for people to say, oh, they could never do that.
It really is an interesting conundrum because we know what we can do and we know where we came from. We have a very clear history of technology when it comes to humans. And we also know that there are planets surrounding stars all throughout our galaxy and all throughout the universe. But we're still skeptical. It's so funny. And
Yeah,
so
it is.
But for a guy like you who's actually encountered it, even though you saw it, it had to not seem real.
Oh, yeah, in your sanity, for sure. I mean, it was like I was practically catatonic for days afterward.
You're on the fence, off the fence
Yeah,
about Grush.
The story I was hearing, it's a lot. I'm going to skip a lot of it, but what I was reading and / what they were saying is that one possibility that could be going on is there is I think we're taking in some of Graham Hancock stuff too. If people were around on Earth 500,000 years ago, in some way, there was some split and a second set of humans continued on, and we're like in this interdimension space where they're both happening simultaneously, and that's where like if
He was saying this?
no, this is from I'm gathering this all from like that video. I'm adding in some of Graham Hancock stuff too because this kid also interviewed him, Jesse Michaels, on his podcast,
Okay.
and they're talking about some of the same stuff. But something they said in the Grush interview on his podcast was that an idea would be that these people exist on like a split timeline from us. Like we had cataclysms and died and repopulated and whatnot. Now we've ended in this place in 2023 with combustion engines and we're flying around. These people would have been in a different anti-gravity. Who knows what they figured out.
And they went somewhere else?
I think they're not even saying that. This is where like they're not going to talk. They haven't talked about that, but I think what they're saying or getting at maybe is that they're here, and that's why the nuclear thing is so important to them. They're on the same planet as us, and if we blow up the planet, it goes away for them.
So they're
too.
here, we just don't know where they are?
And that's where the interdimension thing comes in. That's what I'm gathering out of what I've
How
heard.
high were you when you came up with this theory?
It's not. I don't think I'm saying it's my theory. This is what they're sort of saying.
understand.
And Grush is sort of like, that's an interesting thing you're saying. He's not confirming it with them or anything. It's a lot to take in. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, it's all a lot to take in. David Grush is that UFO whistleblower that testified in front of Congress.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, man. The thing about it is, I believe he's telling the truth as far as what he's experienced and the documents that he uncovered and the people that he talked to. But how do you know whether or not they're just using him as a useful idiot to just get out some silly story because they're covering up for the fact that there's some very advanced drone system that the United States government has they're trying to keep under wraps?
Right.
It might.
No.
I think it's probably both things. Well, here's the thing. You're out in the woods all the time. You ever see
No.
Bigfoot?
No.
Talk to a hunter that's seen a UFO?
No.
Ever talk to a hunter that's seen Bigfoot?
I talked to
Really?
the guys down at San Carlos, the Apache Reservation.
Yeah.
They said they've seen stuff.
Okay. Were they on peyote? Those Indians like to get down.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't. And it's been
Did they
like
just-
multiple times,
What stuff?
like square, like something square flying. Yeah.
Because that is the thing that they describe, right? It's a square with a sphere inside of it, like a black. No, the opposite.
Yeah.
A sphere with a black square
Yeah,
inside
like
of it.
a force
Yeah.
field or
I
something.
was fucked up.
Yeah. That's.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody other than that. That's the first story I've heard from somebody who I have talked to.
That kind of makes sense. Because
Yeah.
that thing they do spot. That's a common one. Some flying square inside a sphere, like a translucent sphere. And that's like legitimate pilots have seen that. That's a weird one.
Right.
Is that my theory, and this is totally unfounded without any research whatsoever. It's just
Those
me
are the
sitting
best
around.
kind.
My favorite kind of theories. My theory is that they have this ability to make something move in this insane way with gravity, but they can't put a body in it and they can't put weapons in it. They can't. It's just an object that they can get to move at insane rates of speed. That's what I think. I think the military applications of this thing have yet to be figured out. But I think they do have something that can do things that we have no knowledge of. But the United States government is probably have in their possession something that was either back engineered from something from somewhere else, or something that they developed in a completely top secret environment with the top research scientists, probably during the wars, during World War II and Vietnam,
That's
and
in
in Iraq and Afghanistan. You think about the amount of money that gets funneled through the government, and that they don't. I mean, didn't the Pentagon just for the 6th year in a row fail their audit? Imagine if
Probably.
you failed your audit 6 years in a
Yeah,
row.
I
Boy,
know.
they'd crawl up your ass with a fucking microscope.
Yeah.
I think, was that what it was?
They've ever passed it? But yeah, that is correct. It says they failed 6th audit with number passing grade.
So there's a lot of money flowing around, is my point.
Yeah.
And who knows how much of that money is going to these secret programs that we don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
And if they did that, and they did have the top scientists, and if I was the fucking president, and I was the chief of staff, and I was running the Pentagon, I would want the best scientists. So I'd recruit the best scientists, and I'd say, hey, you know, this is national security. We're working on this project. It uses gravity propulsion. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody, but you get to work on some cool shit.
Yeah. And you get paid a lot of money.
You get a lot of money, and you get to be a part of one of the most insane discoveries in human history. So this is what we're working on.
Yeah.
I think that's likely too. But then you got to go back to like the Foo Fighters from the 1940s and the crash at Roswell, and that you also have to be open to the possibility that, like, look, there's a lot of planets out there. A lot of planets out there. It's very possible that we're not alone. You're an Applebee's guy.
I love Applebee's.
Really? What's
Yeah.
it about Applebee's?
I love the neighborhood, man. I love the
The atmosphere.
I love the atmosphere. I love the drink they give you that comes with a gummy shark.
Which one's that?
I don't know what it's
It's
called.
like one of them signature cocktails.
Yeah, but it's so good. And they have a special Mountain Dew at Applebee's.
They do?
Yeah.
It's special?
Yeah, it's special. It's only in Applebee's.
What's the special?
You looking for another one of
No,
those?
I got this one right here.
It's like a raspberry flavor, I think. It's called like Space Punch. It's got
Dark Bash.
Darkberry Bash. It's called actually NASA uses orange filters on Mars Bash. I should God check that shit out. Look into it.
They might.
guys.
I think Amy's saying about color correction though is accurate.
Yeah, like
And
when I was just looking at the photos, they all come black and white, I think.
right. I think the thing is that they're just getting data. They're getting data, and that data has to be interpreted into an image. And it's a lot more complicated than like you taking a picture on your iPhone and texting it to me, and I get it, and it's in full resolution.
Look up Mars.
iMessage.
Look up Mars. Copy and paste. Look up NASA. Copy and paste.
NASA copy.
Let's see if this works.
I'll add Mars.
Just add Mars for a buzzword.
What do you think about all this UFO disclosure shit? Are you paying attention to it?
Yes. Yeah. It's. I think it's pretty cool.
That's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's in like how little people seem to care.
Because we already know.
I know, but it's interesting. Like there wasn't like some moment where people like were like, "Holy shit, aliens are real." There
Pretty
wasn't a
soon
moment.
that's coming.
You think? I think it's because of this slow trickle. It's going to be. We just accept it.
Well, they try to normalize it with like War of the Worlds, which is like the War of the or Battle of Los Angeles and shit like that. That was a real fucking thing that happened. The pictures of Battle Los Angeles is crazy.
What happened exactly?
There's
Battle
this,
of Los Angeles?
there's this big object in the sky, and we're shooting machine guns at it. We
What year
got
was this?
spotlights. This is like in the 50s, maybe.
There's this photo.
Look at this shit.
Wow.
So we're putting fucking
they have
rounds on
these
this fucking thing.
Spotlights on this thing in the sky.
Look at the rounds.
Right, but what is it? What is it that they see? That's weird. That all you can see is spotlights.
1947, it says in the corner.
Boy, that looks like a fucking flying saucer.
Look at
That
in
one?
the look at in the middle
Yeah.
and look at but those things around it, those are fucking like Ma Deuce rounds. Like they're shooting at this fucking thing. They don't know what it is.
Well, you know that there's a famous story from the Soviet Union that these guys shot at a UFO and it turned them into stone.
Is it true?
I don't know. The CIA investigated it. Here, I'll send it to you, James, because I sent it to Jeremy Corbell. And that's what I asked him.
Fuck, I should have had links, Jamie. God damn it.
Well, this is the only link I have. It's
CIA UFO turned into stone.
You find that stuff.
You're
Did you
definitely
find
on a
it?
watch list, Jamie.
Yeah, so there's literally like a CIA document about it. That these guys supposedly shot at a low-flying spaceship. According to the KGB materials, a quite low-flying spaceship in the shape of a saucer appeared above a military unit that was conducting routine training maneuvers. For unknown reasons, somebody unexpectedly launched a surface-to-air missile and hit the UFO. It fell to Earth not far away, and 5 short humanoids with large heads and large black eyes emerged from it. It is stated in the testimonies by the 2 soldiers who remained alive that after freeing themselves from the debris, the aliens came close together and then merged into a single object that acquired a spherical shape. That object began to buzz and hiss sharply and then became brilliant white. In a few seconds, the spheres grew much bigger and exploded by flaring up with an extremely bright light. At that very instant, 23 soldiers who had watched the phenomenon turned into stone poles.
Poles.
Yeah, only 2 soldiers who stood in the shade and were less exposed to the luminous explosion survived.
No shit.
The KGB report goes on to say that the remains of the UFO and the petrified soldiers were transferred to a secret scientific research institution near Moscow. Specialists assume that a source of energy that is still unknown to Earthlings instantly changed the structure of the soldiers' living organisms, having transformed it into a substance whose molecular composition is no different from that of limestone. Oh my
It
God.
turned them into limestone.
Turned them literally into limestone.
And this is a CIA
Yeah.
paperwork?
Well, this is, they're reading from a KGB file, right? So it's just go to the very bottom of that again, Jamie, the very bottom of that. It says one of the things that says the CIA representative stated, if the KGB file corresponds to reality, this is an extremely menacing case. The aliens possess such weapons and technology that go beyond all our assumptions. They can stand up for themselves if attacked. But the thing is, they're saying if the file corresponds to reality, that means there's a
If this is
question.
real, they're tough.
Yeah, they can fuck with you.
What year was this released?
I don't know.
Source is a newspaper.
1991?
93.
93.
So there's all these disclosures that are going on right now, and they're very, very fascinating because it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. But it's interesting that they're talking about it. But no one showed me anything yet. I'm waiting for them to show me things. I've seen some things already, like those videos that they took off the FLIR video and the Go Fast video, and these videos of these things where these fighter pilots are trying to track this thing, and it's like zipping across the sky, and they're like, what the fuck is that? I've seen a few of those. I've talked to 2 different fighter pilots that have had encounters.
And they're all in.
They're all in. I think there's a real thing going on. What that real thing is what's confusing to me. I think some of it has to be ours. I think some of it has to be like super advanced drone technology that we don't want everyone knowing about. And it's probably some black ops shit. But I don't think that's all of it. I think it's also possible that we've been visited. It just makes sense. It sounds so stupid. That's part of the problem of even talking about it, because it sounds dumb, because there's no evidence. So you have to believe in something where there's no evidence of it other than like some blurry photographs. But then when you just think about the size of the universe itself and the fact that we exist here on this planet. We're real. We know we're real.
What if it's fucking a Martha or whatever, and they're from fucking the center of the earth, and the holes in the poles or whatever, north and south, and that's where the holes are, and that's why Google Maps blocks it all out and all that shit.
Well, that would be a great theory before cell phones like that.
But it's not there. You still can't see it.
Yeah, but you can with satellites and also flight patterns. Like the people that
Copy and paste.
You know
away.
who doesn't think the world is flat? Pilots.
True. Or anyone who's been in an airplane.
They fly around these motherfuckers. They know where they have to go. They know the flight patterns.
You look at it.
Yeah, you
see
look at it.
yeah.
Also, by the way, everything's round. Go out in the fucking sky and look at Mars, look at Jupiter, get a telescope, look at all the stars. Notice how everything's round? Seems like there's a pattern going on.
Yeah.
Why would this be different?
This ass is round. I don't know. It's so weird, man. I don't know. And you're talking about the oh shit moment. I think we've been so like normalized to it, like ET, all this shit,
Yeah.
growing up watching this shit, to where it's like, yeah, no shit. Everyone, no matter what the surveys say or anything, everyone thinks there's like something going on.
Everyone. Yeah.
There's
a few that still are very incredulous. Elon, believe it or not, is incredulous. He's famously said, if the aliens are real, they sure are subtle.
They're very subtle. Bigfoot's subtle too. I mean, he's not an interdimensional being that could teleport at will.
He knows where cameras are.
He's
He
an
knows
omniscient being.
He shuts down trail
Bigfoot
cams.
is just Jesus Christ, full beard all over.
He's just Jesus. Yeah, that's what he is.
Y'all seen the woods,
He's
Jesus.
a mythical creature that's looking out for humanity, our brothers and sisters. They need our help.
He's a benevolent, kind being.
Doing my first documentary back in 1997 when I was just naive enough to think I can get an interview with Steven Spielberg. We had a mutual friend involved, this woman, Janet. And she gets back to me and she's like, yeah, so Spielberg's definitely not going to meet with you, but he knows you're working on this UFO documentary. He thinks you should look into this landing case that happened in Africa at the school. And I said to myself at the time, and remind you guys that I was making a film on UFOs. And I dismissed it so quickly because I thought, there's no way that a mass landing with the sheer volume of eyewitness testimony at a school in broad daylight could happen and the whole world not know about it. So I just walked away from that story for about 10 years. 10 years later, I'm doing an event at the National Press Club with Leslie Kean, who was part of the article in the New York Times that came out in 2017. And she introduced me to this guy, Randall Nickerson. And she's like, oh, he's working on this landing case in Africa. Long story short, he's working on a film now. I think it's coming out next year, specifically on just that case. Dan Farah is producing it. And he said, I'm working on the case, and if you want to do something with me on it, a small piece, I could. So I got back into it. I licensed some of the footage that Dr. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist that came and interviewed the school children on camera within a week of it happening. He unfortunately looked the wrong way in London, got run down by a car and died. So I contacted the Institute with the help of Randall Nickerson. I licensed the archival footage. We tracked down the witnesses today. We flew them in from all different corners of the world, brought them together. A lot of them were standing right next to each other. They came face to face, and one of the things I've realized was that there were roughly 100 kids in the playground, broad daylight, aerial school, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 1994, and they got within arms, some of them within arm's length of these beings, and brought these witnesses together for the first time in 20 years. And a lot of them hadn't even told their significant others, just because they said they were tired of having to defend this. And I myself didn't believe it when I first heard about it back in 1997. And that segment of the film is the most, in my opinion, is the most powerful segment, because
It's very compelling.
you've got all these children saying what they saw on camera after it happened, and then you see them 20 years later, and then we go to Africa and we meet with the headmistress, or she was a teacher at the time. We meet with other witnesses. We go to the landing site. We talk to people at the school. That case is absolutely, and it was witnessed by lots of other people in and around the area for several days before it chose a school to land. Steven?
It's so telling because the children are all clearly, they're not actors. So as they're adults later, they're all talking about this moment, and it's like they had a religious experience together. Like they're all sharing it and talking about it, and you could tell it's like it's a deeply moving experience. If they were actors, they wouldn't have been able to do such a good job, because to convey the reality of that moment to them, to be able to have this interpretation of this event where they're all consistent in the story and they're all clearly still shook by this moment. It's really interesting because if you had that scene in a movie, it would take like a really good actor to pull it off. And they'd probably need multiple takes. They'd probably want to get the best one. But those kids, the way they were talking about it and the way they were drawing it, you're like, wow, it really does seem like something happened to them.
I know how credible the testimony of the children is because my partner, Rebecca, she's never had much of an interest in what I do, making documentaries on UFOs. I do other things as well, but when I was reviewing in the studio the archival interview of the children, she just dropped off a cup of coffee and she stopped and went, oh my God, those children are not lying. This is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Because look, I ask your audience to don't take it from me. Just suspend judgment for a moment and imagine, hypothetically, if a UFO or several UFOs landed at a school in broad daylight in Rua, Zimbabwe, Africa, and interacted telepathically with nearly 100 school children. Not all of them had telepathic, but seen the incident. How significant of a story would you give that?
Well, not only that, the same message.
Yes.
What the
Yes.
telepathic message was that technology is a real problem.
Yes.
And there's things that people are doing with technology that are going to ruin the earth.
Yes.
And they were trying to relay this to children, which is very strange.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I mean, maybe they just thought they were adults because they were the same size as the aliens. I mean, do you think they knew that they were children? Do you think they understood that it was a school? I mean, this is all speculation,
Yeah.
right?
But no, I definitely had to ask myself, look, during the production of the film, Paula Harris actually turned me on to another landing case that happened in Australia in 1966 at a school. And this time there were roughly 300 witnesses that saw a disc land right outside a playground in Australia. And we went to Australia and investigated that case, went to the landing site, talked to eyewitness testimony, people that jumped the fence at the school playground and ran over to where this thing landed. And then we even interviewed a guy who snapped a photograph of a disc, a Polaroid, back in 1966, 2 days prior to the incident. So it's very probably that we have photographic evidence, we have eyewitness testimony, and for the first time we've got testimony from a science teacher. So why do these things land at schools? It seems like, and I'm just totally speculating here, but it seems like if I were going to do that, it seems like a pretty benign environment. We have testimony from military guys that we take a fairly hostile position towards things that penetrate sensitive military installations. And, so maybe, I'm just saying maybe
It's safe.
Maybe it's safe.
Maybe
yeah,
it's
but we
safe.
have to stop reacting to intrusions by UFOs as a threat. I mean, that's the whole thing behind this new task force. And as much as I respect, the task force, my colleagues and I want to cooperate with them to the extent that we can bring information or resources to what they do. But there is more. This should not be looked at specifically as a threat. I mean, with the phenomena that we observe, I mean, if they wanted to blow up those F-18s, they could do it, okay? Obviously, that's not what it's all about. And this idea of just labeling it all as a threat because it's unknown, that's a wrong idea. 90% of the information comes from the public, comes from children, and very, very little of it is made up. In France, I mean, the data we get, at the French Space Agency comes through channels where if people reported something that's found to be untrue, they're going to be called by the police.